Ruined villages are a common sight in Elden Ring, alluding to more prosperous times, before populations were ravaged by war and stagnation. Each of them tells a story, their unique designs, layouts, and enemy spawns providing valuable hints to theorize on. In this video, we'll study 20 derelict townships and attempt to estimate the size of their past populations. To do so, we'll be looking at various criteria, such as the amount of structures, their size, as well as roads and proximity to castles and major cities, all while referring to item descriptions and known lore. They'll be ranked from smallest to largest populations, though keep in mind these estimates are up to interpretation. Let's dive in. Along the eastern coast of Liurnia lies Jarburg. This secluded village is home to a group of living jars, presumably gathered here in search of peaceful lives.
Hello, Cos. I didn't think anyone knew about this place. Except us jars.
It's doubtful that jars are capable of building houses. So, it seems humans presumably lived here at some point. This is supported by the nearby graveyard, right next to the village. Perhaps these inhabitants were servants of the Carians, who worked in the study hall right next door. We know the Shattering caused drastic changes in the realm's landscape, possibly as a result of earthquakes. Such an event could explain why Jarburg became so difficult to access. As the surrounding cliffs partially collapsed into the sea, the main path might have been cut off, severing the village from the rest of Liurnia, with no other means of access than scaling the western cliff. Even before that point, it likely always held a small population, though, earning it a spot in last place. The Ailing Village is a small settlement on the Weeping Peninsula, due north of Castle Morn. Its inhabitants are gathered around a pyre, evidently driven mad by the frenzied flame. Unlike in other places afflicted by frenzy, the source of the corruption is unclear. So, we can only speculate as to what happened here, likely a tragic event of some kind. Here, the Erd tree's golden light is partially blocked by trees, perhaps a contributing factor to the spread of frenzy. There's only a few houses here, as well as a church of Marika, where villagers likely used to pray in the past. The village is located in a densely wooded area, not too far from the road that connects the peninsula to the rest of Limgrave. Based on enemy density, there were no more than a dozen villagers in this remote hamlet, justifying its rank as number 19. When Renala became head of the Raya Lucaria Academy, primeval sorcery was outlawed. Thus, the founding glintstone sorcerers were exiled from Liurnia. One of them settled on Mount Gelmir, where he and his retinue of scholars presumably taught magic to a demi-human queen. Based on the nearby astrolabe, The Academy exiles have been living here for some time, secluded from their peers. This location is well concealed and defensible, a perfect spot for shunned fugitives who perhaps feared further repression from the Academy. Under their queen's authority, a small tribe of demi-humans also live here, guarding the village from intruders. Interestingly, several corpses of Dominula celebrants can be found here. Maybe they were the original inhabitants of the village, massacred by the Carians and demi-humans. Regardless of who built it, the village is small and isolated, which earns it a spot as number 18. The Shaman Village was Marika's home prior to her ascension, making it one of the most consequential places in the setting. This tranquil hamlet is bathed in golden light of an Erd-tree sapling, left there by Marika upon her final visit. Based on its description, the village was already abandoned by that point, its inhabitants fled or sacrificed by the Hornsent. All that's left of their presence are a few cobblestone homes, their unique architecture alluding to the shaman's foreign origins. Indeed, they were also known as Numen, denizens from another world, gifted with long lifespans, but also seldom born. From here, they supposedly had an excellent view of the region, allowing them to spot incoming threats from afar. Landmarks of the fingers are found nearby, which seems like a pivotal clue about Marika's backstory. The shaman's exact numbers are never specified, though the village's modest size evokes a small population. Long ago, a humanoid species called Zamor allied themselves with Godfrey's forces against the fire giants. They inhabited a small township at the southern edge of the mountaintops, right next to the Grand Lift of Rold. During the war, one might imagine that Godfrey's army spent some time here, establishing a beachhead in this hostile region. As natives of the mountaintops, Zamor knights had an ancient feud with the giants, and were all too eager to join forces with the Erd-tree's army. After victory was achieved, though, the Golden Royals and their troops abandoned these parts, declaring them forbidden regions to be erased from history, and sealed the lift behind them. Surviving Zamorians were thus left to fend for themselves, which might explain the ruined state of this town, destroyed and never rebuilt. Based on the amount of structures, the town likely held a decent-sized population back in its prime. That is, relative to the previous ones on the list. This small Hornsent town is located along the western edge of the Graveside Plains. Its name suggests this was a mining outpost where various ores and materials were gathered. This would make sense considering its short distance to the Tower settlement, the capital city of the Hornsent, where merchants likely resided. When Messmer's army invaded the Land of Shadow, some of its inhabitants made contact with the Formless Mother and turned into blood fiends. They turned to cannibalism and blood worship, granting them newfound power that allowed them to survive Messmer's purge. They evidently laid claim to the Prospect town at some point, and reclaimed its ash-filled ruins from the Crusaders. This is one of the smallest villages of the Hornsent, and as such, ranks as number 15. The abandoned Ailing Village lies to the north of the gravesite plain. According to this harrowing line from a stranded soul, the villagers turned into manflies. The fly sickness appears to have been a major problem for the Hornsent. Perhaps it was propagated by improperly disposed corpses used in ritual sacrifices. The village consists of a few burnt-down houses, with one of them slightly isolated from the others, which might have belonged to a village elder or an official of some kind. Below it lies a headless Hornsent statue, probably a religious or historical figure, also seen in a few other places. Based on the amount of remains found here, this must have been a decently populated settlement before it was ravaged by war and the fly sickness. As one of the nearest villages to the Hornsent capital, travelers and pilgrims likely passed by on the way, using it as a place to rest and pray. Caelem is a ruined village, northwest of Caelid. It was built along the main road, which connects it to Limgrave, Redmayne Castle, and the town of Sellia. As such, it likely saw a lot of passage from all sorts of individuals, such as traders, soldiers, and scholars, looking to make their way through the furthest reaches of the realm. Based on the amount of lifeless trees around here, this evidently was a lush area in the past, before Malenia's scarlet rot infested the region. In that environment, the village would have provided safety from the local fauna, perhaps even an inn for weary travelers to spend the night. Today, not much is left of Caelem, its ruined homes patrolled by smoldering corpses, incinerated by flame chariots in an effort to stave off the spread of rot. The arrangement of buildings evokes a tight-knit community, forced to band together against outside threats. In the end, they stuck together in the face of death, perhaps lacking time to flee west before the rot reached them. When Messmer's army invaded the Land of Shadow, they showed little mercy for the Hornsent. This nameless village stood on the main road of the gravesite plain, making it an easy target for crusaders on their way to the Tower settlement. Here, we find the remains of a fairly large structure, with dwellings on one side and what appears to be a chapel, or perhaps a work area on the other side of the road. Many of the haunts and ghosts appear to be praying in that direction, immortalizing their last moments as they prayed to their gods for salvation. Others carry baskets on their backs, most likely workers toiling away in service of the horn-sent empire. A solitary spire lies next to the structure, perhaps a signal tower that warned nearby settlements in case of an attack. Based on the amount of spectres seen here, dozens of Hornsent must have died here on the day of Messmer's assault, hinting at a decent-sized population. Wyndham is a ruined settlement at the base of Mount Gelmir, west of the Altus Plateau. The place is crawling with those who live in death, led by a tibia mariner. They might be the village's inhabitants, their skeletal remains risen from Godwyn's death root. Speaking of Godwyn, subtle connections seem to tie him to this place, such as Wyndham's etymology. There's also the catacombs beneath the village, where we find various items related to lightning, as well as the ancient dragon cult founded by Godwyn. Then, there's this interesting piece of bark in the village, seemingly grown in the shape of a howling dragon. Perhaps this was a place of residence for the golden demigod, while he was away from the royal capital. The upper structures were built along a slope, with sets of stairs that lead to the catacombs' entrance. Erdtree burial was a sacred rite under the Golden Order, meaning this place was likely well guarded. One might imagine that a small garrison of soldiers resided here, as well as members of the clergy. This secluded village was home to first-generation Albinaurics. It was built beneath the southwestern cliffs of Leonia, under the Carrion's moonlight altar. Albinaurics were shunned and persecuted throughout history, leading them to settle in this hidden place, away from roads and major cities. They led peaceful lives here, their fading legs condemning them to remain until they died of old age. An elevated stone bridge connects the two halves of the village, perhaps built by Albinauric themselves when they first settled here. Alternatively, maybe the village predates their presence, as suggested by these stone coffins. One day, the village was attacked by ruthless aggressors, presumably seeking to claim the Haligtree's medallion, hidden by old Albus.
We're finished. The whole village is finished. The cursemongers have destroyed everything. No one that remains has their wits about them.
Based on the amount of corpse piles, many Albinaurics evidently lived here, which might seem strange, considering there aren't that many houses to suggest a dense population. Maybe there were more structures here in the past, now raised or submerged under poisoned waters. Ordina is a frigid town to the far north of the consecrated snowfield. It is known as the liturgical town, likely alluding to worship of Miquella as a divine figure. The premises are guarded by Albinauric archers, as well as a few Black Knives assassins, possibly charmed by the Empyrean prodigy into protecting the Haligtree from intruders. In that regard, the town features a unique kind of Evergaol, adding an extra layer of protection. The gateway access mechanism was hidden here, ensuring that only loyal followers could reach the Haligtree. The town itself lies in a well-preserved state, its buildings seemingly undamaged by war. Their architecture is similar to that of Sellia, so maybe they were built by the same architects. Ordina is relatively large compared to other villages, though its remote location and harsh climate are important to consider, earning it the 9th rank. The Frenzied Village is a fortified settlement, located in the rocky region northeast of Liurnia. It lies behind imposing walls, which might have been damaged during the Liurnian Wars, back when Radagon led a territorial conflict against the Carians. Inside lie several houses, as well as villagers and Raya Lucaria soldiers, all of them driven mad under the influence of chaos. The Frenzied Flame originates from a lookout tower right outside the walls, manifesting as a fiery eye, perhaps a reference to the iconic Eye of Sauron from the Lord of the Rings movies. The reason for the Frenzied Flame's presence is unclear, though it might have something to do with the village church, where Vike seemingly murdered his finger maiden. Alternatively, perhaps it manifested after a violent battle, much like on Mount Gelmir's upper battlefield. Although the village is quite small, the presence of walls hints at a sizable garrison. So, this one ranks 8th on the list. The Hornsent of the Shadow Realm seem to revere the Rao civilization as deified ancestors. They built a large temple town near the base of the ancient ruins, a place of worship nested at the bottom of a narrow valley. One day, a warrior named Ornis achieved a ritual of divine invocation, which granted him wings. Unhindered by terrestrial limitations, he soared across the skies, possibly witnessing sights that were the stuff of legends in Hornsent culture. He became the town's guardian deity, a story that likely inspired many generations of warriors. It evidently meant a great deal to the Hornsent and their spiritual culture, so one might imagine that many of them lived here in the past, as a thriving community of workers, priests, and warriors. Today, much of the town lies in ruin, likely destroyed during a battle against Messmer's forces. Bonny Village is an important piece of the game's lore puzzle. Here, shamans were melded together as part of the Hornsense Jar ritual, carried out by ruthless officials called potentates. Countless jars litter the place, many of them hung on ropes, perhaps as a sign of twisted celebration. Judging from the village's location, its architecture, as well as the grandmother tree found nearby, it was probably inhabited by shamans before they were conquered by the neighboring Hornsent. We do, after all, face many jar innards in the Shadow Realm's jails, more than can be explained by the Shaman Village alone. The village is spread out across a mountainous rift, close to wooded areas that would have provided food through hunting and foraging. The snake shed lying in these woods is one of the game's most interesting mysteries, possibly linking this place to Messmer, Marika, or even the god-devouring serpent. Bonny ranks just short of the top 5, mainly due to its large amount of habitations. Dominula, known as the Windmill Village, is located along the northern edge of the Altus Plateau. Windmills served an important purpose in medieval societies, mostly as a way to process grain. Perhaps these were built to provide food supplies for the royal capital, as a city of that size would surely require stockpiles. It's no surprise, then, that we find a harvest festival in this place. Only, there's a darker truth to this celebration that's clearly not about grain. The key to this mystery is the festive Greece, which states that the festival is an old tradition, tacitly tolerated by the Erd Tree, meaning the Golden Order. In all likelihood, the celebrants are actually reenacting a piece of Marika's origin story, as evidenced by their hairstyles and the abundance of colorful flowers, reminiscent of the Shaman Village. Many more clues also point to that conclusion, but we'll save that topic for another day. Considering the amount of houses and the village's proximity to the capital, Dominula earns a solid ranking as number 5. An arboreal town sits on the upper branches of the Haligtree. Based on their pristine state, these structures seem a lot more recent than the fortress of Elfael, down below. They were likely built to house guests, as well as refugees who flocked here in search of a better life, away from the Golden Order's persecution. Despite their differences, these outcasts appear peacefully united in their faith for Miquella. Aside from mere gratitude, maybe this can be explained by his charm ability, which is shown to have a similar effect on members of Leda's company. We know the Haligtree's growth ended prematurely, so perhaps the town was meant to keep expanding along with it. It's interesting to imagine what it might have looked like then, as a city-sized settlement nested into a full-grown canopy. Perhaps that's what Miquella had envisioned before recent events caused him to change his plans. Moorth was once a large horn-scent township, possibly the largest, aside from Belurat. It is located on the upper plateau of Shadu Altus, between Caelem and Bonny Village. One of the largest roads of the Shadowland goes through here, which might have been a major axis of trade in the distant past. The town appears to have collapsed inwards, its structures bent and twisted into a crater. This event was apparently caused by Relana, who dropped a full moon spell powerful enough to shatter the town's spiritual anchor. A few Hornsent inquisitors still linger inside these collapsed ruins, likely having survived in hiding. They probably used to reside here, acting as the local clergy. Interestingly, this hole leads to a secret passage into Bonny Village, possibly used by fugitives and smugglers in the past. Several pieces of ruined buildings are found across the road, hinting at the town's past size. Taking these into consideration, Moorth ranks third on the list. The ancient town of Sellia lies in Caelem. It is widely renowned for its sorceries and is tied to several historical events and characters. It is here that Radahn was taught gravity magic, which went on to become his signature ability. His teacher was an alabaster lord, the same one who also taught Gaius. Primeval sorcerer Lusat, one of Raya Lucaria's founding masters, also resided here. In all likelihood, the town was originally built as a Nox colony, before they were banished underground. Despite their departure, the city's customs retained an affinity for magic, perpetuated by their descendants. Although many structures remain intact, it's fair to assume that Sellia was somewhat larger in the past, extending down into what became the Swamp of Ionia. Back then, it was protected behind high walls, most of which are now collapsed, except for the southern gate section. For most of history, Sellia likely was the most populated settlement in Caelem until the Scarlet Rot ravaged the region. Beneath the southern gate of Raya Lucaria lie the ruins of a sprawling township. It was built along the southern high road, which connected the academy to Limgrave and Caelem in the past. Most of the town appears to have sunk into the lake, maybe as a result of shifting water levels triggered by the Shattering. Alternatively, perhaps the damage was done during a military conflict, like Radagon's invasion, or the Academy rebellion against the Carians. Second-generation Albinaurics dwell in the ruins, hinting that they resided here once, living in harmony with local scholars and human villagers. Unlike many of their brethren who journeyed north toward the Haligtree, these ones evidently chose to stay and guard their former homes from intruders. The upper part of the town is still intact and heavily fortified by Academy soldiers, upholding their orders to guard the southern gate to this day. Based on the size and amount of buildings, this evidently was one of the largest towns in the setting, which makes sense considering its location. Not only does it have unlimited access to fresh water, there's also plenty of local fauna to hunt, as well as a major population hub right next door. For these reasons, the Academy Gate Town earns the #1 rank on the list. If you enjoy my content, remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.